So, like different questions. Or I've just done one, for instance, on contemporary Chinese art, an overview. I thought it'd be a sort of interesting thing to work out or work on. So that's just been completed. So,
which is on the website now, which I'll put a link to in the next email.
and the other thing we can do is some more visits in the week. But when I'm free, maybe every other week or every other 3 weeks, I do a visit. And that'll be midweek, let's say on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Maybe a Wednesday. It's a good day for me.
Sounds excellent. There have been some great trips we've had, or great visits, rather.
They are coming here. I plan to be in London from 2nd of June for about 4 to 6 weeks. Looks like I can stay in my ex-flat in Battersea. My ex-flatmate took over the place, but she might be away, and I think I can probably stay there with my husband. So just to let everybody know, I'd love to join for whatever visit or maybe mid-year dinner or something.
What's your date?
2nd of June to about 4 to 6 weeks until mid-July. But I tried to go to Finland with my husband, visiting his friends, and maybe try to go to Basel. Second weekend, that's for the art fair thing. That's about it. But I would love to join some visit or some gatherings.
You'll be in time for this year's grad show as well.
True. Where will that be?
It's Truman Brewery.
Thank you.
Can't remember the dates. We were talking about it today.
There are 2 this year.
Of course, yeah. I only, obviously, I'm completely selfish. I only care about myself. No idea about the MA ones. We are 12th to the 16th of July.
All right. That is note. Thank you.
Can I just ask?
I just saw, I was just going to suggest, Jonathan, would you or anybody else like to go and see the Cézanne show, which is on?
Yeah, I'd like to visit Cézanne because it's got a lot of paintings which haven't been shown in London before.
It's extraordinary, yeah. It goes with the fragments talk.
Yeah. Shall we get started on the...
No, we're not
Can
done
I quickly ask something? When you say visits, you just mean like visits to an exhibition or to something that we sort of pre-assign for a week?
Right, we've done most of the major... We've been to the British Museum, V&A, National Gallery, different contemporary galleries. So we every now and then say, let's do a visit. We give it time and people turn up and we have a walk around. So it depends on whether it's a museum or whether it's an exhibition, depending on what happens. But it's generally, half the group turn up and we have a discussion, and it's a social meeting as well, gathering of the clan. So the way of breaking the continuum of Zoom. Very often we're on Zoom all the time and don't get to meet each other, so it's sort of a chance to meet up and socialize as well as see things.
Sounds great.
Has anybody seen this strange play in Hayward Gallery? Actually, it ended. It ended, hasn't it?
Yeah, it finished yesterday. Yeah.
So what's also good at the moment, I saw it at the weekend, Richard Mossy you see the Brocken Spectre or Broken Spectre at 180 The Strand. Very good video art.
Yeah, it's very good.
Richard Moss?
Yeah, or is it Moss or Mossy? Mosse.
If you missed The Strange Clay, I don't think it was worth seeing.
I've seen it, I loved it.
Pictures here.
We'll have to discuss, I think.
Hurrah!
It's a very special moment.
Maybe, if he can connect.
It's really here, not in space. Victor, are you here?
I think the important question is,
just give me a moment. I have to change the internet thing. Give me a second.
so the question is, Victor, are you awake?
So anyway, who would like to kick off?
No, we're not ready yet. I've been
Ready?
very patiently waiting, but we're not ready yet. So there's one other thing, which is an exhibition. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about this last term, but I think it would be really great for the group if, you know, because the the creative works that we do within the group or have done within the group are usually very short, sharp exercises. You just, you know, it doesn't get to a resolution. And I think it would be fantastic to use this group to actually critique works to a resolution and have a group exhibition where there's an interconnected theme. So Kate Howie has very kindly offered her studio as an exhibition space. I don't know how many of you might not know her space, but she's out in West London, and she has a very large studio there with two sort of indoor rooms and an outdoor garden that's sort of semi-covered. So it's a really great space. And she's offered it to us for free. We just need to decide, you know, when we want to do it so that we can sort of get it into the calendar for the year, and then figure out how we want to use it. But, you know, I think for me, like, at least what I was thinking is like our practices are very diverse. So, you know, we wouldn't necessarily be a coherent group to have a group exhibition if it was just, you know, our work. But if we set a task that we all respond to, like, you know, some combination of text and image, which is, you know, what we usually work with, then that becomes the common thread that, you know, gives the exhibition its narrative. And I think it would be fantastic if we could use this group to sort of critique stuff. So, you know, maybe the exhibition, I mean, I think, you know, Kate's probably sort of booked up at least for the first quarter. So, you know, we're probably looking sort of somewhere towards the summer. And we could use this group. So we, you know, we set the, whatever, you know, the task is going to be. And then we come with a first, you know, version to this group and we critique it. And then we go away and refine it, and we come back and critique it and refine it again. And so we use this group as like a crit to take works all the way through to resolution. And then we have a group exhibition at the end. I think it would be really exciting to do something like that.
Wow, you really thought about this. Thank you very much. It sounds so exciting.
Yeah, that sounds it sounds amazing.
Sounds great.
I'm in too.
I think that's a change we could make, is more serious, sustained relationship to making works in common or for critique or for a forum. So that sense of being able to present work we do as well as do projects could be something that we take more seriously and a more sustained effort put into it. So that's a great. We could discuss that next week.
Yeah.
About how to go.
Maybe we can sort of have some, get some ideas of like what, you know, what the framework could be.
How could you coordinate the ideas?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I think we would, you know, I think Fabiana and I were talking about this before Christmas at the dinner, and, you know, we're saying one way to approach it might be for somebody to write a narrative that we each respond to. Do you know what I mean? So you could even like create a sort of a superstructure that it hangs off. But you know, we can think about it. There's many ways you could approach it.
Good.
Okay. Now you may continue.
Thank you very much.
This is when fragments come together, I guess.
So I would like to begin because it's open, the very open brief, and it could be that it's spontaneous and improvised, or it could be that you've done something. But who'd like to start?
Well, I'm always happy to start, but I'm very happy to wait too.
Why don't you go first, Lester? You always defer.
I know, sometimes to my regret, but I always go
New
first.
year, new you.
So I'm on an iPad tonight, so what I'm going to do is just put it in the chat because I don't know quite how to screen share on an iPad. Where's the chat? Oh, it's not pasting, bugger. Maybe if somebody else can go, and I'll have to work out how to do it. The technology is not cooperating with me here.
Who's next? Victor.
Hi. I haven't heard anything for today. I just, but I wanted to join. Yeah, it was one of the things I wanted to get back to this new year is to join the group. Maybe not every week, but occasionally. It's 5 o'clock here, so it takes some preparation, getting to bed early and so forth. Yeah, I just wanted to rejoin the group again. I missed you guys.
Oh, I'm happy to go. I put it in the chat, the first fragment that I've written. So shall I read it?
Yeah, read.
The unpresentable. For Kant, the sublime is a formless object that can't be contained in any sensuous form. The sublime is one form of the unpresentable. The Generomantics thought the sublime could be represented, and the fragments summarized the infinite. Many have searched for universal symbols to access the unpresentable. Nature for the Generomantics, industrial culture for Walter Benjamin, and the body for Merleau-Ponty. In the Middle Ages in Europe, Christianity provided a set of universal symbols. Following on from Kant's sublime, Deleuze has intensities which are both the object of the encounter and the object to which the encounter raises sensibility. Jean-Luc Nancy proposes a presentation in the mind of the viewer, an unlimitation of the border of the limit, thus on the border of presentation. It is a presentation that doesn't present anything.
You've really got it down to a T.
Well, it's also kind of what I'm doing my doctorate on, so it's it's one I've done before, or working on one I've done before.
It's very good abstract. Do you see it as a fragment?
Well, I was trying to make it a fragment that it's a self-contained little world in and of itself. So I'm not sure really, so up for discussion, so I'll just throw it out there.
Any thoughts?
Stun the silence.
I'm reading it again, just.
Also,
That is incredibly dense if you're if you're not a philosophy expert, I have to say.
Well, I'm certainly not.
What I would say, Lester, is I want to know what you think.
Okay, I mean, but that's a different thing. So what I'm looking at is how the unpresentable can be expressed in physical means, and so I've got a theory on that of how that can be done. But that's a different fragment. So this is just a fragment of the basis of it. And then the second thing I've just posted is just some keywords that work around the unpresentable, which is what I've called unpresentable 2. Or unpresentable brackets 2, I should say.
I was thinking about how to kind of invert this, but how to present the fragment, or how the unpresentable can be fragmented. I think I was I was thinking about writing about what is happening in Brasilia, what happened in Brasilia yesterday with the destruction there, and the shatter of the glasses and the destruction of everything as fragments, and it's a bit too much. And I think what you're saying here complements. So.
It's sometimes what something opens, the implication of what it opens you to something. So the abstract opens you to perhaps a way of writing or a way of making work. So it's like a sort of diagram, serves as an abstract diagram for something.
I was just thinking it's interesting. I don't really know Kant that well. But I was, for my dissertation, I was sort of reading a lot around the sublime, but it was mostly like, I forget who said it, maybe it was Coleridge who said, sort of about the difference between the sublime and the beautiful. The sublime is something that's massive, so he was sort of talking about the Alps, or, these huge landscapes and things, whereas something beautiful is like a flower. And that's very interesting in terms of the fact that we're in this session about fragments, this sort of kind of almost a sort of contradiction between the small and the large. But then I don't really know Kant, so I don't really know how he sort of discusses the sublime, whether he talks about it in terms of scale or not.
I mean, it does designate the discussion of free beauty as the wildflower or the songbird. And it is more on nature than on the work of art. Discourse on the sublime. But one's a formless object and one's an object of form. So the sublime is a formless object. Any other thoughts?
Patrick, you're on mute. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good one to start with anyway.
So I was going to ask, have you considered it in, I guess Hegel would be opposed to Kant in terms of subjective versus objective when it comes to the sublime. How do you...
He would be, and again, I'm not an expert by any means on Hegel, and it's not one of the ones that
I think
I'm
Deleuze would also be thinking maybe in the context of Hegel as well.
I think everybody's looked at the context of Hegel, and Hegel had the feeling of the absolute, which the absolute was God. And so I think you can say a lot of transcendence and the unpresentable comes from that kind of Western Christian thought of the expression of God. But that's, a whole different discussion, I think.
Well, I mean, I was thinking, when you talk about unpresentable, I think Hegel is talking in some sense about an externality with the sublime, and then somehow objective rather than subjective reality. I just wonder whether something to say about the presentability of the sublime.
I guess what I'm trying to do is, because it's a practice-based doctorate, you have to link it to work that you're making. So you're not trying to write a new thesis on Immanuel Kant. You're trying to apply it to the work that you're doing. And so that's kind of what I'm bashing about at the moment. It's kind of early stages. So, I'm sure half of what I'm writing or thinking gets thrown out by the end of the first year, but that's kind of in the middle of the throes where I'm at.
I think, Lester, I'm intrigued to hear the second part. You know, you said there was a follow-on statement or follow-on fragment.
Yeah, it's in the chat there.
The follow-on. You
Yeah,
mentioned
it's just-
something else as well. I think you said there was something else, but maybe it's not yet written.
Oh, no, it's just, what Jess was saying is what to hear kind of my thoughts, which is another fragment. So that's kind of how you apply it to the work that you're making. So that's a different subject. So this is just the background bit to start with. Kind of next week, we'll go into that one.
I think it makes me think about, because Jonathan was saying about the fact that sublime is usually referring to nature as opposed to a work of art that's made by a human being.
Well, I think that would be a Kantian view. It's not everybody's view. By
Exactly.
the way,
So
yeah.
that's something that I wanted to refer to, because it just, when I read it, it kind of reminded me of the work of Berlinde Bueker, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I just dropped her one of her sculptures in the chat, and to me that refers to the unpresentable, to the sublime, in both a very sort of like dark view of the underworld, you may say, or of heaven, or an in between. So it's, I think to me, actually what you wrote really refers to a work of art, but it's very rare that you find a work of art that connects to a sublime.
Yeah, well, in fact, the six kind of you have to, in the first year of the doctorate, you have to write a proposal. It kind of goes through a filtering process. And so you have to then put it in context of the art world. And so at the moment, and this could change in 2 weeks' time to be completely different. So I've already rewritten it completely one time. And so far I've got kind of two strands. One is a kind of a symbolic strand, if you like, which is Cornelia Parker, Doris Salcedo, and Rachel Whiteread. And then more on a phenomenological side is Richard Serra, Tara Donovan, who did these things with styrofoam cups, and then Liu Fan, who from Mono Han, these very minimalist things. So it's kind of two strands that I'm looking at how you might reach the unpresentable in sculpture. But as I say, it's very early days, so it could change completely.
I mean, it's also, you could uncouple the unpresentable from sublimity.
Which is what I'm trying to do, because the argument I'd like to make is that sublimity is only one form of the unpresentable. You know, and that was the first stab in the dark by Kant, and then others have taken it in a different direction.
The work of art per se, in a purist way, can't be a work of art because it's an objective form, no matter how big it is. I mean, that's what you find with Barnett Newman, for instance, who was the most direct artist who referred to his paintings as being sublime. And it could be that you could see them as beautiful paintings, but not sublime paintings.
Yes, I remember we had this discussion when I was doing my dissertation, and then there's the Lyotard essay on Barnett Newman on the sublime, which is quite interesting in that regard.
We're aware of time. Let's move on to the next contribution. I think we could return to this as well. It sort of acts as the springboard. Who's next? Who's got something?
I can go. I have something.
Good.
I'll say with trepidation. Nerve-wracking.
Trepidation is an important contribution to the mood. You're frozen.
Can you see my?
Yeah, I can see it. So you're going to read?
Yeah, I'm going to read. I was checking it's working. Objects as world-bridging devices. If pattern, materiality, and purpose embed culture into objects, then assumptions about a culture can be fabulated as well as deducted by the objects they offer as traces. Holistic white male capitalist colonialism, can someone find a snappy phrase for this, had a tendency to project its own fairly monodimensional readings onto the artifacts it collected, leading to cultural editing and misunderstanding. The absorption of other cultures was therefore done in a way as to prune them of important and valuable nuances. The result was a distorted view of the whole, offering a patchwork of inauthenticity and a population of misfits, a tucked and pleated image. The rupture of the seams, in turn, offers a reveal, the ability to see the whole picture rather than a tailored fit around a median form. By peeking between the threads at the still fresh fabric that completes our various othernesses. Objects and artifacts re-emerge to match wider ways of being. Still coy, a surface is offered as a scrying table. Maybe it is or isn't, it's not certain. The statement is ready to recoil at an instant behind a title shell of perhaps irony, or to offer split in the veils to those who know. And an explanation in the context of which I'm using decolonization. Decolonization in its broadest meaning has created a cultural rupture. Can I stop the share? I can cut and paste it in the comments if that's useful so people can carry on reading. Or shall I leave it open?
Leave it up.
Okay.
So has anyone got a kind of response?
I really like the third paragraph in particular. A population of misfits is a lovely phrase.
Yeah, a phrase can erupt. It can kind of reorganize the whole text in a way as a potential sometimes. Something in the middle can go to the edges of the text as well. I mean, that's part of the potential of the fragment, is it kind of can reorganize the spatiality of writing itself, and what's the beginning, middle, and end of writing can be reoccasioned by a figure of speech or what's the tucked away and pleated image?
I was imagining it as a, you know, if you like tailor or tuck a piece of clothing, you know, you shape it, and if it has a pattern, parts of that pattern are lost, or they change meaning slightly. So if there's like a similarity to a face in the pattern, for instance, it can completely alter the expression. Or, you know, people used to do it with money. They would like tuck the queen's face to make her look less attractive or funnier or something. You know, in the same way as it distorts, you know, tucking and pleating. Shapes, you know, because it tailors to fit, but it can also distort the pattern.
What was your impulse to write?
Well, it was quite conveniently timed, this, because I was revisiting my website. And then I have these thoughts which are fragments, like statements, you know, like objects as world-bridging devices. And so the brief gave me, I guess, sort of like prompt to flesh those thoughts, those one-liners out into a fragment.
There's a signifying chain which runs through it, isn't there? Where you take a material process of folding and bleaching and patchworks and...
Yeah, I wanted to create a visual.
I saw the way of seeing the fragments is it's sort of writing the image, isn't it? Or writing as image, or
Yeah.
any last thoughts? Okay, next. Thank you.
What's allistic?
Hmm?
Sorry. What is allistic? I've never heard that.
Allistic. It's in context of autism. It's the dominant neurotype. If you, in the etymological sense, it means sort of to, well, that's a sort of like opening to a whole topic, because autism means self-referencing and allistic means referencing to other. So in its nomenclature, it's already discriminatory and othering. But yeah, allistic is the sort of neurotype of neuronormal or neurotypical.
Okay, thanks.
Jessica, have you got something?
Well, only sort of, because I didn't really prepare anything, but then I thought maybe use the words that I was playing around with for the last exercise that we set that the night, which was set to music, but I never had the chance to finish. So we can use those for today. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Relax, we're coming to the point. Relax, we're coming to the point where all paths are collapsing into one. Sound might be the one true thing. Sound might be the one true thing, or at least the way the one true thing shows up in this world. Free as though what we want, free as though what we want could be somehow separated from who we are. Relax, we're coming to the point. Sound might be the one true thing where all paths collapse into one. Free.
Are you going to put that to sound?
I was, yeah, for the exercise that we set for a couple of months before Christmas. Have a track, and I thought it would be interesting to play. It's a track with vocals that are completely different vocals, obviously. So I thought it would be kind of interesting to have words on the screen and vocals that were saying something else. But they're not in English, the vocals. So at least for me, it's not that distracting. But I never got the time to finish it as that version of the work. So this is it for now.
Can I ask, Jessica, why you ended with the word free?
I don't know, just felt like a nice way to finish, I suppose. I think it's partly because the track that I was setting this to, this sort of follows the rhythm of that track, and it just happened to have like an extra, like, you know, vocal right at the end, which just needed a word. So yeah, I had only this small set of words to choose from or work within. So yeah, it just became the order. It wasn't.
I come in here. This reminds me of the brown noise that is used in ASMR. People familiar with ASMR?
But I'm not familiar with, what was it, Brown Lewis?
Brown noise, yes. Compared to white noise, which I understand is more like aircon humming noise. Brown noise is more like the wave of the sea, sort of thing. a bit different, bit coarse than the white noise. But what I understand is it really helps people to relax, be free, and used in ASMR quite a lot. So may I just say, people do Google and YouTube and find there are some brown noise. You know, there are all sort of noise, different noises, also in the color spectrum.
I love that. Thank you. I'll have a look.
Yeah, just as background, Jess is big into ASMR, and you did
I
a
am.
couple of things specifically on ASMR, I remember.
I am.
Gives you the feeling of space. So it's the signifier of the text, the sensation of spatial offering and contraction. I mean, it's essentially very open, yet it's very restrained. So it has two pulses to it. Well, that's how I kind of feel. It's got two pulses.
Yeah, I think certainly in the first paragraph, like I think, and the third as well. Actually, there's this sort of contradiction. It's sort of, you know, coming to the point of collapse is anything but relaxing, and you know, this contrasting of like freedom with what we want is actually kind of the point I'm trying to make there, is that it's denying this idea of freedom, that somehow you could choose something for yourself that was somehow free of who you are, and so how free are you actually to make any choice? So there is this kind of sort of internal contradiction that it's working with, for sure.
Any more thoughts? Okay, next. Thank you for that.
I have got one, but it's really just to kind of pulling ideas together in a way. But I'll have a go. So this is embracing the ethics of ambiguity. I've been listening to kind of various things and reading various things, just pulling ideas together. Meaning was created one cell at a time, brought on by tension, and born from a state of painfulness and an indefinite questioning. And yes, of course, the experience of touching emptiness. I appear as an object in front of my own eyes, and the ambiguity of existence all at once becomes clear to me. If your soul were able to leave its tomb, where would it wander? Cast me a spell for going forth by day. I would like to meet this oblivion. I find myself standing within a ferocious silence. Perhaps I should bed down and hold myself here, create my own philosophical fiction. But see, I am wrapped in white sheets and they bind my limbs fast. Is this a place of discomfort where meaning is created? Maybe you can become my moral bedrock. We will exist together forever. I will be your dutiful subject and you my object of desire. We cannot exist without each other. You see, transcendence and eminence are two sides of the same coin. Little bird, when you came near to me, I felt your heartbeat, but when I touched you, you felt cold. And I just put it with this image. I don't know. I mean, this whole thing was about kind of allowing free thoughts to just kind of merge with research. Yeah, it's by Kathy Wilkes.
Your writing's become more sparse. It's a lot better edit than before.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's
I
sort
agree.
of, yeah, I think there's sort of something about just relaxing into it, really, just letting it be what it is.
I thought about what Lester began. Like, I thought I really like the phrase "the experience of touching emptiness," and I thought it was a poetic way to get at the same, perhaps a similar direction, which Lester is kind of leaning in towards. It kind of evokes that sensation more than more academic words.
I think that's one consistent thing we've been dealing with is the framing of language and the struggle between words forming concepts and words being effects. And trusting more with a signification within writing, tone, rhythm, spacing. I mean, the first sentence is important, isn't it? Meaning was created one cell at a time. It's kind of, it opens out something which can't be explained. It reminds me of I'm sure I've come across that phrase, in a similar phrase in Liv Spector's writing.
I mean, I was listening to a talk about Simone de Beauvoir, her writing about ambiguity. And I don't even know if I think I came up with that phrase, but a lot of these things I like to steal little segments of explanations and put them together, because it's something that I find difficult to do myself. And so I kind of borrow things. And then I forget where they come from. And it just becomes kind of a sensation. You know, I like playing with the sensation of it.
Yeah, I think it
worked very well in this one. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jess.
I think it works really well with the image as well. It's like,
Mm.
you know, even though they're sort of not necessarily related, it works, you know, putting this particular image, like the image is more interesting to me with this text with it.
I've got the Clarice Lispector. All the world began with a yes. One molecule said yes to another molecule and life was born. It's got a similar to it. It's not the same meaning, a different meaning, but it's got the same, just starts you in the middle of something which is too big to, it's the opposite of sublimity. It's a kind of, it's a micro kind of insight. Starts with the building block, but it kind of puts you in the middle of writing, or it's in this book, The Hour of the Star, which is fabulous.
Jonathan, Blake is waiting to get back into the meeting room. Could you admit him?
Yeah, I just see it now.
Thanks.
it back. That's great. Who's next? Keep moving on because of
Oh, sorry, hang on.
fabulous. You keep it up. Who's next? Fabiana, have you got something?
Yeah, I was thinking about writing. I prepared something. It was it's a page of a journal, but then I start to write something about the about what happened in Brasilia. But I think I'll go with the thing that I wrote. It's so just share here. So footsteps, 20 September 2022. I finished Clarice Lispector's Água Viva by the River Thames. Not that I had to, but it felt like the right thing to do. Reading at Southwark Park, where the end of the line was predicted to arrive, would do little to fulfill the expectations. I needed to walk a further quarter of a mile to end the book that was a continuum. Closing the text took me back to 30 years ago. I remember taking the ferry boat to Ilhabela, cycling to a beach, and finding my patch of sand. Like today, it must also have been Monday, when only a few others were around by the water. All that effort to finish Macbeth. The tropical view of the gentle crash of the surf rolling in contrasted with the bloodshed spilt in the imagination of all the readers of Shakespeare's play, A Sea of Red. The green vegetation with an overcast, warm grey sky formed the backdrop for the story of blood on the sand washed with the high tide. On the other side of the Atlantic, Clarice's book lives. The Queen is dead. The queue to see her closed coffin is also gone. The peasants' line passed a few steps from where I am now sitting at the river bank's barricade. The tide is high, and so is the wall. Playing with the risk of dropping the book or falling into the water kept me present, standing on the tightrope between the past and the future. From here, I can picture the imaginary triangle formed by the three houses I lived in by the river, the barge at the Hermitage moorings, the flat near the Limehouse basin, and the house at King's Stairs, a few steps from Prince's Stairs. The nobleman formerly known as Prince is now king. The manor house nearby, where I stand, belonged to another long-gone king. They say all land belongs to the kingdom, so the old manor house belonged to the new king, but in reality, queens and kings eventually end up down under the ground the same way. Life belongs to the earth. Kingfish and jellyfish are all the same to me, spice food that doesn't escape the writing chain. A perpetual cycle. I like how the River Thames brought the liegemen to their queen, just like Água Viva brought me to my Ilhabela. Maybe put the text on the chat here as well.
Or wasn't that synchronicity?
Yeah, it's funny how it connects.
I mean, a very simple question. Do you see that as a work or do you see that as a text?
I think the text would generate a work. Like I put the, I found different ways that the images could be following the text, and what I think is funny that every time I read it, and then some things that is happening on the video connects with what I'm reading. Without but if I do it like I did another video through the River Thames, and the things that connect are different, so I still haven't decided what the final image would be, but I think it could become a work of a video with voiceover.
I felt that it worked very well in the beginning, like when it was following land somehow. And I don't know why, if it was the duration, but when you went out to sea, maybe it was the text, maybe it was, I don't know what it was.
The way I think the way I read, I think if I don't pay attention to what's going on, if I don't see the image, you don't see as well, I think, when reading.
Yeah, there was just like, it just, I don't know if it was that the sea, it had just like nothing in it, so it kind of, you lost your train of thought in that sense. But just from the way you presented it now, in the beginning, when you're following the coastline, I think also because I wasn't seeing the text at the same time, but then I was following along better. But towards the end, I kind of got lost a little bit in what was being said. So I'm not sure if that was due to the text or the way they were put together. But would you imagine the text being kind of present?
No, I think ideally would be nice to have subtitles with the text, especially and the thing that Agua Viva, the meaning of Agua Viva and the sea, how they connect, I think they could all merge in a simplified way.
Any more questions? Okay, next. We're halfway through. Anyone else got a text?
I've got something that's not. Yeah, it's just a very rough. It's more a sort of an idea than anything else. It's not even my text. I literally just copied Lester's from the beginning. It was just a sort of visual thought I had in terms of, fragments. So I need to just do some system preferences. Someone else go. I need to. I've just updated my OS, so I need to do some boring stuff in the background.
I've got something that's completely unrelated, and by the way, ignore the toddler screaming in the background. So it's a poem that I wrote a few days ago, and it's just a kind of fragment of a memory, which is how it relates to this conversation. In my past life, I used to be in luxury fashion, as Jonathan knows, and it's just a memory that kind of came back when I was thinking about fragments. Visiting an actress at dusk, we brought a few things for her to wear. A large lit suite in a classic urban scene, large tall glass as a backdrop outlining the Strand. She sifted through the airy light silks, swiftly moving from one to another as if a snake bit her, almost angry at their unbearable featherweight. She settled on the only thing that could possibly represent a trench coat. As double an agent as anything, the object of silent espionage by dark, seedy men rather than sultry women. She stood there, stiff as a sunflower, her slight frame lit up by the sun as if on fire, her large head perched on a delicate neck in flames of shame. Shame of being a woman. She silently cinched her trench coat in the light as it defied her proud face, utilizing the last hole in the belt as to not define her waist, and walked out of the door, her head bowed down. Her trouser legs rubbed against one another, two sheets of taffeta telling a rebellious 10 story. Walking down an elaborate corridor, sphere-shaped LEDs resuscitated as she walks past. Out of the ornamental door, head lowered still, staring at the pavement as if the sun shone from down below, from the gutter, and not the sky up above. My sunflower.
Literally ripples with memorable phrases.
I don't know if you can even hear me because my daughter is screaming so loud.
No, I can hear very clearly.
Yeah, flames of shame. That's great.
It's actually a true story of, I have a few of those that all of a sudden kind of jump out after like 5 years or so, and they come in very fragmented from real life experiences.
Do the words follow memory, or do the memory come out of words?
Very interesting question. I don't really know. It's kind of like, it's organic, one follows the next.
Mm. So both ways around, potentially.
Both, I suppose.
Mm.
Is it autobiographical?
It's not about me, even though I really deeply resonated with her situation. But it's not, it just, I think it probably comes out now because I've always kind of resonated with these sensations when someone is forced to wear a pink puffy meringue and they don't want to. I always understood why that's a huge problem. Because I'm the person who used to create those big puffy meringues. But no, it's not autobiographical.
So there's a coercive side of fashion design.
I think especially when you handle these kind of red carpet moments, there's certain expectations that you have to meet, which is unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Was it, which label was this for?
I kind of promised myself I wouldn't say who the actress or the label was, because in a way, it then kind of reduces it to
gossip,
tabloid, which is part of the things that I really didn't like about it. Yeah, but I think it's one of those many stories that I kind of sometimes just write down.
Have you thought about doing a collection?
Sorry?
Have you thought about doing a collection of stories and poems?
I have. I think I feel guilty because I'm kind of telling stories of people, even if I'm not sharing names, I'm kind of sharing their, their life, and it makes me feel guilty, like, why they didn't want me to share what they were going through, and it was obviously highly personal for them. So I'm kind of sharing it amongst people that I trust, but I didn't know if I should kind of, publish it in that sense, What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, what's your relationship to that world now?
I've left. I'm a full-time artist now.
Do you still have a relationship to those people? Like,
no.
No.
I
mean, it's bleak enough not to really. No one will know, will they?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not very. I don't feel that it's sort of I think from an outside perspective, it's fine. It's not identifying, it's not, it's not ripping anybody off. I would just think about it from your side in angle. Speaking from somebody who's also changed careers, I would feel deeply uncomfortable sharing stories in an artistic context about people in my prior life. So I think that's the angle you need to think about for yourself.
Yeah, that's where I'm stuck, just makes me feel a bit cringy to kind of.
And I come in here, I think it really depends on how we feel. I think we write, or we like test, or we create music, or we create sculpture or painting because we want to express something and we want to share with other people. And I think that's most art is starting from those cave drawings. We want to make something and want to show or share. So it's totally, my feeling is that Molly is totally up to you. If you want to share, if you don't feel comfortable, no. If you feel comfortable, I really want to share this story, then do. That's what I like to say.
It'd make a difference from journalistic or documentary writing about, let's say, fashion. It would definitely open out a world in a new way. It's got a lot of potential for it, so it's a decision you've just got to make.
I think it's also, so very, very many writers, probably more writers than not, draw off, their own personal experiences, and often quite directly. It's just the nature of writing, especially a lot of fiction is, just this compositing of various different events and conversations and things that people have witnessed in their lives, and just, reappropriating, twisting it, recombining it, combining the fragments, as it were.
It's not as if you're trading on it in a sort of tabloid way. You're actually thinking a little deeper about the sort of human condition or issues that are arising through that experience, through those stories.
I think the thing that would make it help is if I knew that it could help someone in some way. I'm still not sure it would. It just feels like it's just me kind of vomiting bits of memory, if that makes sense. But I think if I felt, because that would alleviate my sense of guilt of sharing someone's private moment. I would feel like,
you're not saying who they are.
No, but it just, for some reason.
Yeah, but people in the context would know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
most interesting writing in general is basically just like using, like ruthlessly reusing whatever experience in life, like novel writers and people who write their own life stories and all these things. Like I think there has to be some sense of like whatever you share to a certain extent, you're kind of using your past experiences. So I don't know.
It's the the tension between transpersonal and personal. As long as it's got a transpersonal element to it, it works. It's when it descends into a kind of purely personal vantage point. In other words, words go through you. You're not in possession of all the words. It's not coming all from you. It's coming from language and coming from figures of speech. So it works on language, which is transpersonal. It's got a task. It's responsible to language. It's not responsible to the individual. So as long as there's a transpersonal dimension, I think it's legitimate. I don't think you can link ethics and aesthetics in too direct way. You can't reduce one to the other. You can't say, oh, it should do some good for somebody, because that you can't anticipate. You can't take responsibility for that. You can only take responsibility for your use of language. And if your use of language coheres in a way which has a density and transpersonal dimension to it, it frees up the reader. The reader's not taking responsibility for the experience. They're transposing the experience through language. But I think if you've got a lot of those moments, and it's to do with a previous life, it's a legitimate source for a piece of literature.
I also don't think it always has to cohere completely to real life. I mean, like, you can, if it's seen more as a piece of writing than like a biographical story, then you can take creative liberty to kind of adapt it. And like, the writing is what's important, not necessarily how much it coheres to reality. I mean, sometimes when I write and I think about memories, I mean, you change things so that they work better in the writing, because the writing is it's like when you're painting a painting, it's not the coherence with reality that's important, it's the painting itself.
Yeah, agreed. I think in that specific, like the things that come out, it's just almost like flashbacks in a very sort of like raw form. But at some point I might work on them to kind of, make a more fictional path. But at the moment they're just like sort of just fragments, and I quite kind of just keep them to myself as such.
Yeah, I think there's a potential for that anyway. Very good.
Thank you.
Next.
Right, so I'll try going again. Let's see if this works. So this is not, it's sort of, all I did was basically just take what Lester's written. I was just sort of thinking about fragment and what, visualizing what does a fragment look like. So I just sort of drew a shape of a fragment to then mask out the text, which just sort of started, I don't know, sort of, it just sort of started, maybe start thinking about sort of language and, because, what is a fragment? It's just a piece of something else, something broken off or whatever. So how can things change if you just start to, sort of edit using shapes or whatever? But that, I mean, it's not much. It's just a little sketch, really.
All I read is in the Middle Ages in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. The whole text has become about the Middle Ages of Europe now. I quite like it though, because it does, like, accepting that point. But it makes me more curious about
it. Could be a kind of score, couldn't it? It could be the beginning of a score.
Yeah, I was just sort of,
fragment of a fragment.
Yeah, so I don't really want to do it, but you kind of do. I want to sort of almost get a book and just start ripping it to pieces, and rather it brings to mind like the cut-up technique, but actually making it sort of kind of effectively completely random, and then see what comes out of it. Maybe what happens if you do just tear up a load of pages of a book, and then like we're seeing here, you've got in the Middle Ages in Europe. That's just a line. You're just quickly grabbing whatever you see from the first ones to then make something else. I don't know. Feels like something I might play around with though.
Kind of would like it even if it was like multiple of these, and I would have to kind of make the missing links up in my head. I would literally spend a very long time doing that.
The potential.
I would be disappointed if I spent a long time and then I found out it was completely random, because
here's a question then. Why would that be disappointing?
Because there's no thought behind it. It's like you're wasting my time. Like, randomness is not interesting. It's not interesting to watch like we call them like walking ants on the television when there's just like blank noise. I mean, complexity comes from some.
It's interesting you come up with that example, because that's for me, white noise is one of the most beautiful things ever to see on television, because it's you're literally looking at the what you're seeing there is the background radiation from the Big Bang. You're seeing the beginning of everything. But at the same time,
I mean that, but that's interesting because you said that phrase. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
The content, like from an information standpoint, like I just use it as an example, but like I don't know, there has to fall somewhere between the spectrum of like randomness and some form of like intended structure for it to be interesting.
I mean, people said about William Burroughs that they didn't believe his cut up. It was cut up. They thought that he interfered with it too much. So you've got to have a method.
There's one. Oh, sorry.
Go on.
There's one curious thing is that the amount of verbs that you take out of a fragment. So there's to access and following. Are there more or?
This is the only one I've done. So is that what you're asking?
So yeah. So I mean, in all those words, there are only 2 verbs. I think it's nice, like as a extract information from the content.
So I like as well, just like can you see my cursor? You know, just what happens, you know, because it's literally, I mean, you can see the sort of mass shape, but you know, when you start slicing off bits, so it just becomes kind of incomprehensible, you know, fragments of the individual characters as well. Maybe it's a route to a new language or something. Anyway.
Next. Anya, have you got anything? Anya's not there.
I have something, but it's not very sophisticated. I spend today thinking about the meaning of fragments and what it means, and came to the conclusion, like you said, that everything we live in are made of fragments. We're all made of building blocks, and even the language we're writing is made of fragments, all these letters that can be reused and moved around to take up a new personality. How can I share my screen? Can someone share screen? Okay.
It's just green icon.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, hear you fine. Not a problem.
Shall I read?
Yes.
Because I can't hear you. Just do this or that. Okay. The fantastic fragments of fragility. Once upon a time, there was a whole, but it down into tiny little fragments.
I'm not sure I understand.
What was that?
I think you have Siri on.
Siri's rubbish at art.
The latest member to the group is using Siri.
please. Okay. Okay, so I go again. The fantastic fragments of fragility. Once upon a time, there was a whole, but it broke down into tiny little fragments. Some were soft, just like when a wave breaks down into bubbles, and some had sharp edges, just like me and you when we break down. But with time, they weathered, softened, and the sharp edges rounded up. The fragments found a new life of their own and became whole again. We and the universe seem to be in a constant state of oscillation between the fragments and the whole. And I just wanted to share some images. Some photographs I took yesterday when I saw the Cézanne show, and I just took some detailed photographs of his brush works. He hardly ever blended, he just put fragments of paint just next to each other. And it made me think, because I was thinking of fragments, by definition, seem to have a history and talk about a glorious past and a glorious whole. But then some fragments can give birth to the whole, just like a Cézanne painting. I'll show you one more. I think Siri said it all.
I liked, I really liked that some things broke into bubbles and other things broke into things that were sharp. But then I didn't like that the sharp things became soft, and that's where we were left.
So I was just making an analogy to when people are hurt, and you approach them when they're in a different state of mind. When they're broken and hurt, they can hurt back. But with time, things heal. That's what I was referring to. But yes, I didn't. You see, all day I was just writing bits of fragments. I was trying to make sense of them. I even broke down the word fragment, and I thought what else can it turn into? We could get gem, fame, rent, rage, ants, men, rant, fat, star, ran, frame. We can make the fragment into different fragments.
Yeah, nice.
But my mind is really scattered and fragmented. So.
But I love the notion too that it's either fragments or it's a whole. It's kind of there's two states existing, and it's perfectly illustrated by your Cézanne paintings. So when you go in, zooming in, you've got those fragments of paint, color. You pull back, and it's a whole.
But in a way, the fragments are also a self-contained whole, their own little world, is in a very limited scope, which I think is interesting about them too.
There's a difference between a fragment and an aphorism in writing. Aphorism is a whole. It's completed. but it's also fragmentary.
And what about shattering? It's making me think now, because it isn't just about fragments and wholes, is it? You know, the fragment is only, it's still a piece, right? It's not shattered. It's not obliterated. It could be returned to a whole potentially, you know, but there's another direction which doesn't go back in the direction of whole. It goes into dissipation.
I think it was one of the best things you've shared in this group. I mean, it really worked well with the handwritten way. And I found it more interesting before you described what you were trying to describe, like healing a person, like but the text in itself I found rather good. And maybe when you looked at the Cézanne fragment, I don't know, just randomly it made me think about like a painting has a hole in itself, which a photography isn't. A fragment, like a painting is like it's in some sense a painting has a hole, whereas like photography is always like a part of a bigger whole. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like you always assume there's something outside the frame in a photograph, whereas in a painting you've kind of chosen, I don't know, it's a self-contained whole in some way, whereas like photography you don't reach that same mental
Interesting.
state.
I never thought about it.
And also you were obviously looking at the exhibition in a way which was a different sort of optics than which you might have looked at before. It's a sort of new process. So you really sustain the rather than just taking one or two fragments of the painting, you took numerous fragments of the painting as if it was a way of looking at Cézanne. That Cézanne was, you're able to cohere a relationship to Cézanne through that way of looking, had a special optics to it. As if these momentary passages of concentration that Cézanne himself, he must have gone from passages where he lost sense of the whole back to the whole again. So it's something to do with you trying to find a way into Cézanne, his optical procedure.
Have you spoken about this? Sorry.
They said it's quite a spontaneous process that you've entered into. But I mean, I think. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I just thought you should have performed it as a performance much more. When, as Victor said, when you explained it to begin with, you broke the spell of the performance a little bit.
I just didn't think very much of my work. I thought it was just, compared to everybody else's, it was a bit basic.
I completely agree with Jonathan. It was like, because I also, visually, I really liked that rough kind of text. And had you read it like kind of disrupted and like, even like going very dramatic, like some loud, some quiet and soft, it would have really worked for me, because I thought that the text was good and the visual was quite, for some reason, it was really interesting, that bit of paper.
Anyone else? I've got something. I don't know what to present.
Has everybody gone then perhaps before Jonathan as a summary? Can I share something quickly?
Yeah, you share. You do it.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Mine is very simple, short, and very visual. Can everyone see okay? So I was thinking about fragment as a from starting from definition, part, portion, section. We talked about this before, something less than a whole. So I was thinking about fragment from the whole is part, segmenting, breaking up, and look at the other side. From fragment, we can build up and make something whole. This is my mom's patchwork. I came from single parent background. My mom works mostly like a seamstress to bring up my brother and me. And somehow it sort of gives me some ideas, aspirations during the lockdown. This is a piece of lamy fabric I had. So when I had a 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off studio, I was putting this together. So from fragment building up to make a shape or pieces or wholes. So I call this I gave a title Winter Flower, be like waiting for the spring to come. After the COVID, a lot of us experienced the longing, waiting, anxiety, anticipation. And this one is another one, more of mom's embroidery work. She put together all the little pieces, and this is part of cushion cover she made. And when she passed away, the family just took the little things. I just get the cushion off and save this. This also gave me the base of my work. This is autumn. This is coming from the space, the other way of approaching it. So I have a canvas piece, but I'm dividing it, break into fragments and pieces, and apply different colors. The final story of this is I had this little show before I came to London about 3 years ago, and someone came and liked it and asked me why only autumn. And I said, I haven't finished the others, and she commissioned me from a club to make 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And her thing is I might have mentioned this before, like old Greek and Rome architecture, they used to have 4 seasons at the entrance foyer of like noble houses and etc. So she got approval from the art committee of the club, and I managed to finish that. So that's the 4 seasons at the foyer of club. I thought when I was talking about, think about fragment, more of poiesis and praxis that created something and as a process. So I was looking at it in that angle. So my presentation, not so much of text, but more of visual, and it's more personal in a way. So thank you.
Comments, thoughts?
It's a very, I'm not quite sure. I kind of know what the word is that I'm looking for. I say curated, but it's not really the right word. There's a sort of what's the word? It's like you're using, I mean, the text was extremely brief, but, the words that you were using had been given, a lot of thought. So it's like, I don't know, it's not curated, it's not edited. There's like something underneath it that I'm trying to get at, but I'm not sure what it is. But, similarly with the images, it's very refined. Maybe that's the word. Very, very refined.
Condensed, is it? Condensation of something, of a state, of a feeling.
It's also recombination as well.
And I thought the fabric pieces before the 4 Seasons paintings were interesting, because those were fragments of your memory and your past that you're trying to give expression to. So obviously you wouldn't read it literally, but I mean, you could see that something generated it. So I thought that was very interesting.
Any more contributions?
I have something.
On the symmetry with the painting and the embroidered pieces, where one is making a whole. The embroidery, you know, it's like taking fragments and making it whole, and the other one's dividing it from whole. I thought that was quite interesting. I think you kind of mentioned it.
I mean, the reflection also of temporality. I mean, it's both about the segmentation of time, but also the process by which to make a bedspread takes a very long time. So it's a sort of endurance of time as well as the fragmentation of time. Patrick, have you got anything?
Yeah, I have something. It's kind of something I wrote for something else, but I think I can use some of it. It's kind of a fragment of something else. It's like, is the fake real? Sensory experience, the digital, impinges on our realities, constantly blurring the lines between known and unknown experience. Materials dissolve into immaterial surfaces where lost dimensions become unfathomable as we drift in and out of utopia. Within this world, propelled by human desire at ever-increasing speed, resources shrink as the new continually casts off the old. Instantaneity and relentless speed obscure the ground. Nothing changes with time at these accelerated temporalities. Rather, duration and spatial dimension dissolve into an instantaneous future. How could we imagine stepping out of time? How could we step out of the incessant flow of the digital world? Are we to crack open the screen or step into this cave of illusion? Step out of this time. To pause the digital flow is to realize darkness, a stage on which we can momentarily stop the digital flow and step out of time. But nothing lies behind the simulation. Nothing lies within the landscape except the surface itself. It seems we cannot grasp the depths of the hole's blackness. Our cave light's depths blur our vision, leaving us uncertain of what is reality and what is illusionary. Only by exclusion can we dispel illusions and ensure the darkness helps us step out of time. We need to plunge deep into the cave's depths so we might transcend illusion to a path where we might momentarily step out of ourselves and us. Is the fake real?
I'll leave it up, Patrick.
Oh, sorry.
I really enjoyed that, Patrick. It reminds me of I think, is it Baudrillard's Simulacrum?
Simulacrum,
yeah, it's kind of got some of that in there.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
it
also.
takes you-
Can you put it back up?
Sorry, I'm trying to find it. I don't know why I can't.
You've lost it already.
Sorry for like seeing things open.
Someone's listening to what you're
You've
saying.
lost it.
There was more text and I had to remove it because otherwise I had to show new images. That's what I was trying to do, editing down. And it's kind of a fragment or something that should be published in some magazine. Sure.
I think you found a really good trajectory here. Like from in the beginning, your writing was very I don't know. It lacked the sense, some sort of poetic dimension to it, or it was overly technical in some sense, perhaps. And then it became very sparse. But here, it's kind of like you can see that. I think it's also what comes to surface is your experience, or your experience within physics. So you can sense that you have a notion of, you think about time and dimensions, and you have thought, or you think about them sincerely. So when you write about it poetically, you do it without falling into the many traps that people tend to do when they talk about these topics, which I find really, because there's a lot of ways you can talk about time and dimensions, which kind of miss the mark. And this one doesn't.
You have the authority.
Yeah, I mean, but the authority is not claimed in some academic way. You can of read it through. It's read between. Well, it's kind of it comes through between the lines, but also not just from an academic or physics perspective, but also thinking about it in more philosophical terms, which I think really comes through nicely. The last paragraph I kind of zoned out a bit, but I think that was just me kind of falling into other thoughts. But I thought otherwise, specifically the first three, I thought were really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it, the reason why, on top of what everyone else said, I think that it really works is that it kind of provides you with almost like a visual lens as well, because I felt that it was quite cinematic in the sense that it wasn't just the dry words. It kind of lent itself really well to this kind of almost David Cronenberg type realm vision. So it really helps kind of put you into the words and what you're saying, and kind of make it more, I suppose, more tangible, if that makes sense.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say the sentence, nothing changes with time, that these accelerated temporalities, is brilliant. Really brilliant insight.
I mean, you're a lot more confident as a writer on many registers, joining registers together. You're able to move very seamlessly through different registers of speech without sort of over complicating it.
It's still, it's always the case that that's only true because you become immersed in something. You only touch on that for a very short period of time when you're completely immersed in all these things you're reading. It was a moment when I wrote it. I thought I kind of could see the connection between all those things. It's difficult to get to that state. I don't walk around in that state. I just very occasionally get. I think, Jonathan, you seem to be in that state all the time.
I follow you very neatly on darkness. It's a bit too long. I'd like to just show you a fragment of it, or a piece of it, but not necessarily read it. I wrote it over Christmas with my. You see it.
On black.
Someone else want to read it for me? I'm a bit self-conscious about. I think my voice is a bit slurred. One of the features of my condition.
I could read if you want.
Yeah, it'd be good if you could read.
Black. There are many different types of black. Black isn't just the absence of other colours, but it also serves as the entrance or transitional passage into different worlds. The world he had entered now was so different from that of his childhood, so this implicated a different relationship to black. It is difficult to distribute the sense within the memories of it, which might appear to be touched by something close to objection. Now he was alone, with just his memories of black, that now stood out because they were linked to a discovery of the self that was tinged by a feeling of solitude that should be absent from his childhood experience. To be a child is often to be trapped by a network of signs and exchanges that are not generated by the self that is compelled to partake in. Part of this network are a series of punishments that are designed to control or regulate behavior, often more symbolic than physical. Adults, it seemed, knew much about the working of shame. Punishments in his family were often related to the deprivation of light, and the earliest, most persistent one was being sent to the bogey hole beneath the stairs. When the door closed, there was both an absence of sound and light, so it was a torment of lack which served as the corrective. The bogey hole was an imaginary meeting site with the bogey man, who was always lurking, supposed to be there in waiting. No one he remembers talking to such an entity had ever occurred with the bogeyman, but this was still part of the imagination that was invested in being there. This might have been seen as an incline of reverie towards its darkening. If he or any of his siblings were extremely badly behaved, then a passage into the coal shed was secured. In a way, this was a double mode of blackness, that of the absence of light and that of the substance of coal. There was a chill inside this space which came with the enforced solitude. Even a bogeyman would not be able to endure hanging out in this space. Perhaps it was possible that the space itself was in between the underworld of the coal pit and the coal being burnt, becoming transformed into smoke or smog in the process. This gave the space a transitional quality, which meant that it was unstable within the process of imaginative figuration. Both spaces exercised different imaginative labours, but then there were more hidden spaces to be explored. After the lights were switched off to go to sleep, he would sometimes go beneath the blankets to imagine the dimension of the forever and forever of the infinite blackness of space. This visual journey into immensity induced a near sensation of terror, which was the opposite of dream work. This was composed out of all possible figures in free play, making it the most frightening of all spaces he might have visited, because it was free from the rituals of adult imposition. What was threatening with this exercise was a disappearance of the self, an exercise without design or theatre, in which there was no social participation. This wasn't punishment because there was no object of correction or disciplinary procedures invested in it, but perhaps it was an outcome of lessons learned within the former modes of experience. Returning to the idea of an underworld made him think of his grandfather, who had worked on the night shifts in the pit. He would never talk about what it was like to go down into the deep of the earth. Children simply had no need to know about this world, so on such matters he remained silent. He wondered if miners had different types of dreams than other people who lived without entering such underworlds. Anyway, it was just a place that was unspeakable, a job attached to a mode of existing in a different relationship to space and light. In the 1950s, miners would return home covered with coal dust to be cleaned off in a tin bath in front of the fire. After eating, they would go to the local pub to replace the loss of liquid from their shift with pints of beer, which was also connected to a ritual of forgetting. Miners, it seemed, left their sweat underground and their memories washed away in liquid. That was the dark poetics of extraction and retention. When a miner retired, he was invariably given a pocket watch for his services rendered. This now might be understood as a form of unintentional black humour, because most miners tended to die within a couple of years of retirement, so they had very little time left to spend in this life, and the pocket watch simply measured the time which was left. His grandfather eventually escaped working in the pit, but never lost the fixation of his memory of it. He guessed that was because of the way that it was buried so deeply within the fabric of his body. Every time he would sit in a comfortable chair, then he would drift into sleep, as if he was still sleep deprived after all these years of working night shifts. My grandmother would say that his snoring was related to him dreaming of being down the pit, but who knows? Sometimes he would fall asleep driving, so he was always close to dropping off. So he never really lost the experience of the pit. Tiredness was the pit inside, a slow, lingering sensation that resisted erasure. The bogey hole and the coal shed served as a warning that if you failed in life, then you might finish up working in the pit, which in turn signified a state of exile within this life. He would always say that we should pay attention to what was on the blackboard, because it was represented by his own lost possibility. As for my grandmother, she had joined the Salvation Army and immersed herself in prayer. She liked to see her grandchildren with clean faces and threatened to wash out their mouths with soap if they repeated rude words. Later in his life, his grandfather would take himself on holiday to Spain because he loved the combination of sunlight and fresh orange juice. He would sometimes say that his childhood was full of smog and the levelling down which poverty secured, whereas his adult life was a grim confrontation with going down deep into the earth. But now it was sunshine and fresh juice, which was closer to an image of release for him, and with this a cushion on which to fall asleep.
A lot of memories there, I think.
Yeah. My memory is sharper with childhood than it is with adults' time. My memory gets obscure as it gets more recent.
Very tender.
I really got this thing about this sort of disappearance of the self. that sort of sensation of dissolving. And I wondered, because that the image of the boy in the coal shed, I felt that could in some way wrap the blackness of that could wrap around this whole memory. I almost was sort of longing to go back to him in the coal shed, and this because I was sort of still there with him when you were describing the grandfather and the grandfather's journey underneath the earth, and you know, the dirt on his skin, and even at the time of going to the pub, that it's sort of, I still felt you were in that little coal scuttle or coal shed. I thought there might be something interesting in that to wrap it around. It's really beautiful.
Sorry.
Go on.
Oh, please.
Go on.
I really, I thought it was very, very beautiful and very sad. And I really loved the way that everything reminded me of Black, even when you were talking about the grandmother and the way that she used to clean the children's faces. It was about dirt. And then when the child was under the blanket, I felt like the material there was porous, like coal. So it was almost like through the words, you kind of, no matter what paragraph it was, it kept kind of conveying black and texture and that material. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
And then I love the ending with the contrast of the orange juice and the sunshine. It just puts the blackness back into even blacker space.
And the black humor with the pocket watch. I thought that was a really nice touch.
I mean, it was true that miners in that period just almost retired and dropped off into death space. They didn't really have a life after retiring. Their bodies were just gone.
It's almost like they couldn't deal with daylight in some way. You know, they needed the darkness.
There was a really nice line in an interview with Robert Macfarlane I heard yesterday, actually, and he was talking about his father was a doctor in the mines, looking at all a lung doctor, and he was saying he was taught as a kid he was taught to whistle by someone who had escaped the mines, who had managed to retire early, and he said he was the happiest man he'd ever met. It's a really lovely notion of being taught to whistle by him.
I did that writing as I've got a lecture in the MRes on blackness, not next week, the week after. And I sort of tire a little bit of didacticism. So I thought I'd write a complimentary text, which is there for the taking if anyone wants to read it.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks for the reading.
Pleasure.
It's a beautiful bit of writing, Jonathan. It's like very evocative and just very well crafted as well. You know, you're right there with the character, which is, I guess, you.
I guess it is. I mean, the going under the blankets is a true story. I used to very often think about Forever and Forever. And there used to be a point where I just had to stop thinking Forever and Forever because I'd go mad. I felt it was on the edge of madness. But it's a journey into the unpresentable to link up to the first contribution. We're at exactly 8 o'clock.
Can I finish with one fragment to finish?
You finished with a fragment.
All right.
Sorry, I should have.
No. This is a perfect way to finish, I think. It's really short. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Witness, to be present, carrying forward the weight of what has been experienced.
That is short. It's like a stop on the night.
My punctuation point.
Incredible image as well. Wow.
How do we follow this next week?
Well, I guess, and if we're going to go and have a think about some ideas for the structuring of the exhibition, it feels like we should have a chat about that, but that's not a whole session. So maybe pick one, like a shorter lecture to go alongside it, and we'll maybe do half and half or something.
I mean, Jonathan, what about presenting the PowerPoint we just uploaded for you on the Chinese one?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Contemporary art.
It's not. It might not be so long. Might be a half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. We could have.
It's over 100 slides.
100 slides, but it's not got a lot of text. More a visual presentation. It's such a special problem. It was a sort of interesting problem to work on. It's how to present a kind of history which you're not connected with or can't claim an intimate relationship to or knowledge of.
Can I come in here?
Yeah.
A lot of presentation I personally think could be actually interactive. Then presenter shows up having 20-30 minutes of presentation, text and slides. So I'd like to suggest, if everyone is okay, that Jonathan's on this Chinese art thing, I'm quite interested in. If we can pause and have people interact, ask questions or discuss in between, will there be a way of actually...
We could do that. I mean, that's one thing we could take on much more is another style of doing presentations.
I think like particularly if it's, it's a nice comment that you made that, it's an area of interest to you. So I think like when we're like crossing each other's, territories, it might be nice if that, other individual was to contribute some ideas as well, We've done that a bit before, haven't we, Jonathan? I've contributed on sound stuff before.
Found together, didn't we? There'll certainly be help with pronunciation of words and. Shall we improvise next week?
I think often there are bits that I'd like to delve a little bit more, but it's difficult because we don't stop, and then it's difficult to go back. So it's not that idea.
I mean, what we could do is just improvise and see where we go with it. See how long it takes. But we'll start off with a discussion about the route to an exhibition or joint work or critiques or. I mean, today was one of the best presentations we've done, the most full and the most fluid. And a lot of joins, a lot of things joined up together. It's as if we begin to get a kind of unconscious matrix organized together. And definitely the sense of the project is that you could say that we're artists who are interested not just in writing, but as writers, writing as art, as an art form. We can share this as a forum for that sense of project. Any last thoughts? Any?
Oh, Thank you.
It was
Thank you
lovely
again,
to join
Jonathan,
again.
for
Thank you
hosting.
so much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Victor. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
And healthy.
Happy, healthy
And
year.
warm,
Thank
he
you so
looks
much, guys.
warm.
And warm.
Warm.
Damn.
Warm, healthy, and happy.
Yeah, so all good. I might not join every week because it's pretty early to get up at 5, but I'm going to try to join more often.
Mate, we've been missing you.
Yeah, I miss you guys too.
Yeah.
It was nice to join today. Great work, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you
later.
Bye.